Aloha guitar class. This is lesson 3. Today we're going to talk about rhythms and chords. Okay, so two very important things. And first let's talk about what we should be practicing and how we should be practicing at this point, and then we'll develop that a little bit in the lesson. Okay, so first the documents you should have out for today's lesson is how to read guitar chord diagrams, rhythm chart, and then all of the songs that we've done in lesson 1 and 2, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, Eau Claire de la Lune, and Drink to Me, and then a chord chart and Bob Dylan's Knocking on Heaven's Door. Okay, so first, let's start by talking about how to practice, okay, and review a little bit about the technique for your left hand and your right hand, okay? So the first thing you should do is take out your tuner and tune your instruments. E, A, D, G, B, E. Eddie ate dynamite, goodbye Eddie. The names of the strings. Okay, so once your instrument is in tune, make sure it's always in tune. That's one thing you can do that will make your practicing not very enjoyable, is that to not tune your instrument properly, and then, well, you're the one that has to listen to it, right? When I watch your assignments and things, I'm listening to it, so I really appreciate it if you tune it very well before recording assignments. But when you're at home practicing, you're the one who has to listen to it. So, it hopefully it should be in tune. Okay, so that's the first thing, and then holding it. Sit in a chair, a firm surface. Preferably one without armrests. This one I have the left armrest is fine. I've removed the right armrest because that's the thing that gets in the way of your guitar. Okay, I'm using a footstool. Okay, this is a good thing. You can change the height. I use like the lowest setting because I just need to get it a little bit higher. And that helps me to kind of sit up a little bit straighter. And especially for beginners and people who are learning, it's really important to get the guitar at the right place. The lower it is, the harder it is going to be for you to reach things with your left hand. So this really gets the thing in a good position for your left hand, and that's really what that's all about. Okay, so elevate your instrument somehow. You don't necessarily have to have a footstool. You can, put your foot on pretty much anything, like a bicycle helmet or whatever you have laying around. But yeah, sit in a chair and not like on the floor or on a couch or the bed, because those surfaces are usually too soft, and the floor is like, it's not really very practical. I know that sometimes like it's comfortable to do that, but it's not a good way to kind of like learn how to hold the instrument properly, which is what this is really all about. Okay, the right arm goes kind of like on the top of this thing. All right, everybody's arm is a little different. It's a little different length. So what you can do is you can move the arm kind of like this way, but what you don't want to do is you don't want to be up here, right? Okay, and you also don't want to be like coming over the top of your guitar. Okay, you'll notice when I do that, I'm out here over the fingerboard. That's where I don't want to be. And when I'm up here, I'm kind of back here. And if I'm like too far back, I'm going to be back here near the bridge, also where I don't want to be. So the pick should be centered over the hole. That's another thing, is that we have to be using a pick at this point. We're going to learn how to use that first, and then later we're going to learn how to use the fingers, which is a little bit harder actually. So it's a little bit easier just to grab the pick. Okay, only 2 fingers on the pick, the thumb and the first finger. And usually, so when your right hand is relaxed, what happens is usually your fingers spread out just a little bit. You know, it's sort of like if I was to kind of shake this out and try and relax the hand all the way, and then it winds up kind of like this, and you see my fingers are like not, you know, together. I'm not making a fist, and they're also not like this. All of those are indicators that you're just too tense, and you need to relax your right hand. And then very simply, you hold it like this. There's this separation here between these two fingers. The thing you don't want to do is like get this finger on the pick, which seems to be something that a lot of people want to do, which is why you know, it's good to separate those, right? And then you point the pointy end towards the strings. This finger is good for kind of coming over and adjusting the pick, moving it around. But you don't want to fidget with the pick too much. You want to get like a good grip on it, and then you're ready to go. And you want to kind of like cover most of the pick. You see, I've got my thumb kind of centered on the pick, and my finger like this, kind of centered on the pick. I'm not holding like the edge of the pick or the edge up here. Okay, my pick has this little like grip tape on it, um, and also you want to, at this point you want to be using either a medium or a heavy pick. This is like extra heavy, um, but anything except thin. Thin is just like a little bit too flimsy and not very useful to us. Okay, so if you don't have one of those, you have to get one immediately, because you know, that's one thing I'm looking for. Your assignments, I believe, instruct you to use a pick. But basically, you know, if you're watching the lesson video or the example video and I'm using a pick, then you need to be doing the same thing. And, you know, you just want to try and kind of, at this point, like imitate what I'm doing to the best of your ability. All right. So when I get my elbow here in the right spot, and it's not up here and it's not over the top, what I can do is just I can like relax my shoulder. You see, that's another indicator, like if someone's shoulder is kind of like creeping up closer to their ear, then something's not right. So that's kind of the point of this, is right when I get it in the right place, I just rest the weight of my arm on the guitar, and that kind of just holds it in place and balances it, right? And when I do that in the right place, my guitar will be pointing kind of in, you know, up slightly. Okay, it's not like a 45-degree angle, but what you don't want is the guitar pointing this way, right? Because that defeats the whole purpose of like elevating it and getting it in a good place for your left hand. Okay, and then when this is in the right place, I relax the shoulder, and then I can just kind of swing my arm, right? And everything is like kind of relaxed. And when I swing my arm, it's coming across kind of at the sound hole, right? So like up here, it'll be closer to the fingerboard, and then down here, it'll be closer to the middle of the sound hole. And that's kind of what we're aiming for. And if that's not happening, then you can move your arm up this way a little bit or back this way a little bit, just to get that coming across directly over that sound hole. Okay, so, and everything's kind of relaxed and loose, and I know that's hard when we're trying to concentrate and focus and play something that's difficult. We have a tendency to kind of get very tense and tense up, and you know, but that's not going to help very much. So let's play the scale. Okay, C major open position. So once you're holding the guitar the correct way, you've tuned it, you're sitting in a chair, you're holding it right, you've got your pick, the next thing you want to do is play that C major scale. That's our main warm-up exercise. Okay, so get that out. Basically, everything that's on the study materials on Google Classroom, you should print all of those things out and have them in a binder, and so that you can flip through the pages. you know, it's best if you get those like plastic sheet protectors. That way you can have a page like on the front and a page on the back. And that's sort of like, you know, so it's like a book that we're flipping through. So when we turn the page, there's another page behind it. And that's the best way to just, you know, to look at music, especially when we start looking at music charts that are more than one page. You know, we want to be looking at page 1 and page 2 like this. And for one thing, that helps you to get organized at home with your study materials. But another thing is that it's just not good to be scrolling around on the computer screen, right? Like you've got your example videos and your lesson videos that you're trying to watch, and if you're trying to toggle back and forth on the screen or using multiple screens, and you know, when you get to a certain place in the song, you have to stop and move the, you know, scroll the screen, and you know, that's just not good. So uh, it's best to just have your music right in front of you so you can look at the pages like that, and have everything. You don't have to scroll around at all. Okay? It affects the continuity of the music. It breaks up the flow of the music when you're trying to practice. So let's do our scale. C major, position 1. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so if you're not able to keep up with that, that's okay. Uh, you know, you want to practice with that example recording, you can slow it down, or you know, now might be a good time to kind of like pause the video and play that one more time, and then we'll play it one more time together. Okay, this time I want to show you a tool that we can use to help us with rhythms, and it's called a metronome. All right, there's a lot of different apps. I kind of like this one because it looks like an old-timey metronome. You know, this is what metronomes used to look like with the pendulum, and this is just kind of neat, you know, the display on this metronome, right? Slow, and you can speed it up like this. Okay, that one's just kind of entertaining to look at, I think. The one I recommend, though, for everyone is called Speak Beat. Speak Beat. Okay, it's like this, and, you know, okay. You set it to quarter notes. Okay, this one is really neat because it has that, the tick, you know, click, 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 click. Okay, but then also it has this voice feature,
1,
right?
2, 3, 4.
And that's really, that will come in handy as well. So tick and voice. Okay. Let's start with a really slow tempo 40, and we're going to play our scale along with this. And what you want to do is to play one note every time this thing clicks. Okay, let's try that. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, if you weren't able to do that right now, that's fine. But we're setting goals for ourselves, and that's one of the goals. 40 is kind of usually about the lowest speed that I set this thing to. Any slower than that, it becomes kind of the the time between the two clicks becomes a little bit too far. So that's a good setting point. And then if you do this weekly, you can start to see your progress based on the setting of the metronome. So you start out at 40, and then maybe the next week you're at 50, and the week after that, you're doing it more like 60. And the faster and smoother you can do that is a good indicator of where you're at with your level wise. Okay? So the metronome. The way they measure this is the same way they measure your heartbeat, which is beats per minute, BPM. Okay? And we were just at 40, and then I sped it up to like 60. And those are, that's a good place to start with the metronome. And I'll also be showing you how to do that with your other songs. Okay, so let's take a look at Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Okay, which is sort of like the next thing that you want to do in your practice session. Okay, can we see all the notes there? All right. So right here, this is a rhythm indicator right here. It's called the meter or time signature. And this one, it says C, and that stands for common time, which is 4/4. The other way you'll see that displayed is it will just say a 4 on top of another 4, 4/4 time. But also common time is a good way. That's the most common type of time signature. And what that means is that there are 4 beats in each measure, okay? And the way we measure the beat, right, is like the way we measure the heartbeat, the beats per minute with the metronome, okay? 40, all right? Okay, so there's another item here, the rhythm chart, okay? So what we're looking at here are these rhythm symbols up here. We're not quite at the point where we're learning how to read those notes. We will later on in the class. Right now, what we're trying to uh, learn in today's lesson is the rhythm symbols, okay? So right here, if you look at the rhythm chart, you'll find that first note right here. It's a black note head with a stem, and that's called a quarter note, and it gets 1 beat. All right, it's called a quarter note because you can fit 4 of them into one measure of 4/4 time or common time, and that's why it's called a quarter note. And what you do there is you play 1 every time this thing clicks, okay, because it gets 1 beat. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so before in the previous lessons we were just learning like how to read this tab, okay, the strings and the numbers, and that's how we find where the notes are here on the instrument. Okay, when we play a note, I just want to remind you with your left hand, keep your thumb up here, grip the neck closely, and always leave a space between the neck and this part of your hand. Don't close this all the way, okay? And your finger should be arched, a nice arch to the finger, okay, like that, gripping the neck closely, right? What I mean by that is that there's no space here, right? This is all the way up here like this, and then that kind of allows me to arch my finger like this. This is going to be even more important when we're playing the chords, okay? And also you want to get good position on the fret, right? not too far back here. The middle is okay, or all the way up here without actually being up on top of the fret is a good place to press on it. Alright, that's just a little review about our left hand. Alright, and right now stop and just check. Look at your right arm. Is it in the right place on your guitar? Is your pick coming across the sound hole? And you know, is your guitar pointed down like this? Because that's not good. You want it up here like this. Okay, and then the other thing is, like, you don't want your wrist to be bent too much like that. Okay, any kind of extreme bend to the wrist is not good. You always want it to be kind of straight. A little bit of a bend is okay, but not like this. Okay, and that's another reason why we want to kind of grip the neck closely. So that's why also we have to keep the fingernails very short, because if there's any little bit of fingernail there, it will prevent you from arching your finger and playing on the tip of your finger like the way that you're supposed to. Instead, your finger will be kind of more at this angle, and then that's not good. You can kind of get away with it on Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but when we start playing the chords, you're going to have a really hard time, and it will be pretty much impossible to play at that point. Okay, so quarter notes, one for every beat. The next thing is this one. That's a white note head with a stem, and if you look at the rhythm chart, you'll see that that's a half note, and that one gets 2 beats. Okay, so twice as long as the quarter. All right, so with that information, we can play this entire line here. All right, and just everything is quarter notes except here is a half note and here is a half note, so this is a longer note. You can think about this even if you're not playing with the metronome. If you pay attention to those cymbals, you can get it to sound pretty close to what it's supposed to sound like if you just think of it like this: short, 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 long, short, short. Because the metronome is more of, like, you know, the next stage um, of the process, because when you first take the chart out, you're not going to be able to just like put the metronome on and play right away. You have to kind of play through it a few times, get an idea of the notes and the order of the notes, and get familiar with that. And then after you've practiced that for a while, the next step to take is to play with the metronome. Okay, it adds another challenge to the practice. It gives you kind of a push to get better at playing it, and it's more challenging. But when you're doing that, you're practicing rhythms, okay, which is what we want to be doing and what we want to be learning. And rhythm is what makes music difficult. It adds the difficult. The faster you have to go, the more difficult it is, and that's part of it. Okay, so now let's play that entire first line with the metronome. 2, 3, 4. Okay, I couldn't decide there if I was gonna stop or keep going, but anyway. Uh, so 1 beat for each of these quarter notes, and 2 beats for each of the white notes. All right, but like I said, if you understand what these symbols mean, even when you're not using the metronome and you're just playing through it for the first time, I want to make those kind of even and equal, and the this one is a longer one, you see. And even though it's not being measured exactly, it sounds close to what it's supposed to sound like. Okay? Which is the essence of it. You know, these are short and this one's longer. And, you know, things being equal with the counting and the timing. All right, we don't have to play through the whole thing because the rhythms are all the same. Okay, so after you do that, a good final step to take is to play with the example recording. Now, I mean, it's good to at least to listen to the example recording, um, like before you even play the song, because you know, especially because you know you can see how I'm holding the guitar, how I'm holding the pick, how I'm holding my left hand, and you want to do everything the same as much as humanly possible. You know, as much as you can, you want to imitate how I'm doing everything. Okay, if I'm using the pick, you use the pick. If I'm using my index finger, I use my index finger. Okay, the fingering is really simple right now because we're doing everything in the first position or the open position. And if it's a 1, we use the index finger. If it's a 2, the middle finger. If it's a 3, the ring finger. And if it's a 4, the pinky. So really simple. But that keeps everything organized, and learning to play in position helps you to develop a feel for where the notes are rather than, you know, having to look at what your hand is doing all the time, okay, which is what you want because you want your eyes on your music and not having to look at all your hands and fingers and what they're doing all the time. So the last thing you want to do is to put this recording on and play along. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's like a final check, and that will let you know if you're doing anything wrong, rhythm wise and note wise. Okay, um, and once you can do that at full speed, uh, then you're pretty much done. You can just move on to the next thing. You don't have to keep practicing it as long as you can do that. Um, you know, if that's too fast, slow it down. You know, go to the example video, slow it down to 75 or 50. I mean, 50 is going to be really slow on this, but 75 maybe. And don't forget, what you really want is this custom setting, and that gives you all these options for speed that you don't get on the other. Okay, that's how that works. Um, and that's just a good way to check that you're doing everything correctly. And you know, when you do things more and more correctly, and you know that it sounds good with the recording, that gives you more confidence. You know, because in the beginning there's a lot of second guessing yourself, and you know, I'm not sure if I'm doing this right or if I'm doing the right thing. Um, but as you know get better at playing with these recordings, that gives you the confidence in your practicing that yes, I know what I'm doing, and I feel confident that I can do these things with some proficiency. Okay, so moving on, Eau Claire de la Lune. All right. Oh, that's the example recording. Um, and here we go, Eau Claire. That's the next song. So everything is basically the same, except rhythm wise. We've got the quarter notes again. We're still in common time, so 4 beats in each measure. Half notes are 2 beats. And then we have this one here, and this is called a whole note. If we look back at the rhythm chart, you can see at the top here, the whole note. It looks like a half note except no stem, and you'll also notice that it takes up the entire measure, and that one is 4 beats. Okay, so a long note. Okay, and yeah, you'll see this is 4, 2 plus 2 is 4, and 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 4. So every measure adds up to 4 beats. Okay, so let's try this one. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Okay, and so on. Now, when I count like a longer note like this, what I like to do is play the note and then I count starting from 2. So I play the note, 2, 3, 4. Because what you need to really count is um, the note, the space in between the notes, right? So you don't have to start counting on 1, 2, 3. You just play the note. That's 1, and then you count 2, 3, 4, and that's a good way to count these longer notes. What you really don't want to do is go 1, 2, because then we've done 5 beats, right? So if you count it from 1, which I don't recommend, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, let's try that again. Let's use the voice function this time. Okay, see what that's like. Ready?
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so this is why we have to practice every day, because it's not enough to just learn the concepts. We have to get to the point where we can actually do it in time with the beat and with the recording, and that's the standard. Okay, um, we don't, I don't have requirements on, like on the speed. So when you have these assignments, it doesn't say you have to do it at 75 beats per minute. No, it's not like that. It's like it should sound rhythmically correct. It should sound like it sounds like on the example recording, and uh, you have to kind of show some evidence that you've practiced along with that recording to the point where you kind of know the song. Um, and with the metronome, it is also a really good way. You can do everything. If you do everything with the metronome, you'll get really, really good results. Um, you play your scale with the metronome. You play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, Eau Claire de la Lune, everything with the metronome, and then you can really play it. Um, Whereas if you don't use the metronome, we always cheat and give ourselves more time to get to like the next note. Okay. Um, and when we start doing the chords, you'll see it's an even bigger challenge to get from one chord to another chord instead of just simply one note to another note on your guitar. Okay, so the whole note, 4 beats, and you can play it 2, 3, 4, and then the next one. Okay, let's take a look at this one. Drink to Me. All right. Now, this one's a little different. Okay, the main difference here is that it's not in 4/4 or common time anymore. It's in the second most common time, which is 3/4, which some people call that a waltz. That's sort of the dance, the 3/4 dance. Um, but what that means is that there are 3 beats in each measure instead of 4. Okay, so we don't count to 4, and you can get your metronome to count in 3 by clicking the gear wheel, and then you click time signature, and you do 3/4 instead of 4/4. You can set the time signature up here, so now it counts to 3.
1, 2, 3, 1.
Okay, and also if it's set to 3/4, then it gives like a higher pitch click on the metronome for every beat 1. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So this also marks the beat 1 every single time, and that helps you to kind of like as you play through the song to keep, you know, the beats. That's called dropping a beat. If if suddenly halfway through the song, beat 1 is no longer beat 1, you missed one of the beats or something. Okay, and that's not good. If I play before the metronome clicks, that's called rushing. Okay, and if I play the note after the metronome clicks, that's called dragging. So what we want to get at first is playing like right on the click, right when it happens. Okay, and yeah, if you do it before, rushing. If you do it after, that's called dragging the beat. Rushing the beat, dragging the beat. Okay, now there's 2 things that are different here rhythm wise. We have this note here, which is a half note, and it has a dot on it. Okay, it has just a dot next to it. That is called a dotted half. Okay, the dotted half note, and that one gets 3 beats. And you'll also notice that it takes up the entire measure of 3/4, which makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. When you add a dot to a note or the rest, this column here is rests. We haven't really talked about that, but it's the same amount of time, but without playing anything. This means be silent for 3 beats. This means you're playing something that lasts for 3 beats, and this is you're being silent for 3 beats. Don't. Silence, rest. A dot adds half the value to the duration of the note. So half of 2 is 1, 2 plus 1 is 3. Okay, half of 1 is half, and 1 plus 1/2 is 1.5. Okay, half of half is 1/4, and 1/2 plus 1/4 is 3/4, and that's how the dots work. It adds half the value to the beat. All right, so with that information, we can play Drink to Me, and also we can tie a note to another note, and that makes one big long note. So this is a note, since it's tied to this one, it lasts for 6 beats. So you play this note and count 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 until the next note. And you do not play this one, it just sustains the note like this. So when you see the tied note that's tied to the next measure, you'll see the number in parentheses like this. Okay, so a note that lasts for 6 beats. This one is a dotted half note tied to a half note, so that's 5 beats, and then this comes on beat 3 of the following measure. Okay, so let's try this one with the metronome. Okay, go back to the tick. Okay, I'm just gonna count 3 and then we start. Ready? 1, 2, 3. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it's just about trying to pay attention to this other thing now. So the first thing is we kind of learn the notes and where they are on the guitar, and we practice that. But then the next step is try it with the metronome. All right, and if you, like I said, if you can't keep up, that's okay. Just keep practicing until you can. All right, by using, either the example recording or the metronome, or just doing it, again and again and again until you get better at it and better able to move from note to note. Okay? And I promise, if you practice every day for 20 to 30 minutes, you will get results. Okay? If you can do more, then do more. Okay? If you can do more, you'll get better results. Okay? Don't do too much, so you'll get burnt out if you do that. Okay? And then play with the example recording. One, two. Let's slow it down. 1, 2. This is more about the 40 beats per minute. 1, 2, 3. Two, three, 1, 2, 3. Okay, you get the idea. So it's a process. You get your chart printed, you play through it a few times, but then, at a certain point, you got to start trying to play with a beat, okay, with the metronome. Or with the example recording, you can slow the example recording down even more and maybe start with that. But the sooner you can start doing that kind of practice, the better, because then you'll be practicing rhythms. Your assignments will be better. It will sound more like you know what you're doing, and things will make much more sense. Okay. And also, the course materials throughout the semester, they get like a little bit harder. So each week will be kind of like introducing more rhythms and different kinds of rhythms and talking about counting and playing with the beats and counting it out. Okay? And then, yeah, at the end of all that, test yourself by playing with the example recording, and if you can play at the full speed, the normal speed, then you're done and you don't have to practice that anymore. You can move on to the next thing. Okay? All right. So that's just a good introduction to rhythms. That rhythm chart is a good reference for any symbol, rhythm symbol that you see on a chart that you don't know. You can look at that. And at this point, I tell beginners a lot that at this point it's like a matching game, right? It's not a guessing game where you try to guess what the song is supposed to sound like, or guess what you're supposed to be doing. It's matching. So you see the rhythm here, and you go and you find it here, and it's one beat. Okay, we see the note here and we find it on the guitar. We match what we see on the paper to where it is on our instrument. And with the chords, it's going to be more of the same, right? It's like we want to do it exactly the way it says in the charts and in these lessons videos. And the videos and the study materials tell you everything that you need to know at this point. Okay, there's no mysteries or secrets going on at this point. Okay, just step by step, uh, do it by the book, and try not to get too creative with things at this point, because like I said, there's a lot of sort of guessing involved in that, and we don't want to do that too much. Okay, let's see, we're done with Twinkle, done with Drink to Me, done with Eau Claire. Let's take a look at this document called How to Read Guitar Chord Diagrams. Okay, so exciting chords. This is what like everybody wants to do, which is, strumming the chords. Okay, that's what usually sounds the best. It can be loud. And that's just what's really cool about the guitar. But um, you know, it's good to start with something simpler, right? Because the chords are a little bit harder. And it's good to learn how to kind of play one note before we start trying to hold down multiple notes all at once. Okay? So the diagrams are like this. It's just like you're looking at your guitar and it's over here hanging on the wall like this. Okay? So, and that's what you're looking at here. So this is the low E string, the A string, the vertical lines are the strings, the D, G, B, and the high E over here. And we have the frets here, fret 1, fret 2, and fret 3. Okay, and the numbers inside those circles tell you which fingers to use. So this one means the B string, fret 1, B1, okay? B1 with everything. It's a little joke. Okay, B1. And then this is the D string on the second fret, right? Because it's fret 1, fret 2. So D string, second fret, like that. And then this is the G string, but also on the second fret. So you see these will both squish into that second fret. Okay, so you know, if your fingers aren't quite fitting, or doing what you want them to do, like take your other hand and kind of move them and squish them together to get them to do what you want. All right. So what you want to watch out for though is like if your finger is too far back here, that note isn't going to sound very good. It should be further up on the fret. If this finger gets too far back, this is a really easy one to get too far back because you're trying to fit both of them on there, but you want to move this forward, and this one should be like almost touching the fret, but you don't want it to touch, because if you get up on top of the fret, it sounds like that, which is not what you want. You want it like this. Okay? Again, thumb goes up here, fingers arched. All right, it's even more important now because we can only touch the string that we're supposed to touch and not the other strings. Okay, and it should look like that. All right, watch what happens when I get down here. My fingers start to straighten out, and now my chord sounds like this instead of the way it's supposed to, like this. So coming down here is not good because your fingers don't arch the way that they need to arch. And then The X's up here mean don't play that string. So on this chord, which is called A minor, the little M stands for minor. I don't want to include this string, right? So I'm only strumming 5 strings, okay? And when you get your fingers in the right place, what you want to do is check it to see if you're doing it right. And the way you check it is you play each string one by one like this. Okay? And that's what you want, is a nice clear tone on each string. If your chord doesn't sound like that yet, don't worry about it. We're gonna practice this and get better at it as we go. Okay, so what you're watching out for there are notes that sound like this, buzzy notes, or notes that sound like this, which is just a muted note or a dampened note. And we want, like I said, a nice ringing, clear note. And we're looking for that sort of stuff. So when you find one, you have to kind of move around. It's always like little adjustments, right? Little movements. So the difference between like this and this, okay? And usually the solution is like to arch your fingers more and to push them up like this, you see? Here, up to here. Because the fingers have a tendency to droop a little bit, and if they're just a little bit droopy, some of your notes will disappear, okay? Alright. A minor is kind of a hard one. Let's try something easier, okay? Let's see, we covered all that. The O's are open strings. So we have an open string here and here. We're pressing down notes here, and then this one we don't play. X. Okay. And just remember, it's like you're looking at your guitar like this, hanging on the wall. That's how the diagrams are. Standard, you know, the standard diagrams like this. Okay, this is a chord chart from a book. But this one's kind of special because I've gone through it and changed some of the things on here, photoshopped some of these numbers to be the numbers that I want people to do. And as far as this class goes, I want everyone to play the chords the way that they're shown here on the chord chart, okay? You might have had some previous experience and learned some of these chords already, but I want you to do it this way, okay? Using these fingers, just so that everyone in the class is all playing the chords exactly the same way. And when the class is over, you can experiment all you want with alternate fingerings. And, you know, that's when you sort of progress to a certain level. You can start experimenting and doing things differently. But in the beginning, it's good to do things this way. And I have my reasons. I have some good reasons, I think, for doing things a certain way. I've been doing this for a while now, and I kind of have an idea of what things work and what things don't work. And I can sort of see into your future a little bit and see, you know, if you stick with this and do this for the next 2 to 5 to 10 years, I can see kind of like, well, if they do it this way, you know, in a couple years they're going to be experiencing this problem and that problem. And, you know, if people get started down this path, I want them to be armed with some good skills and technique, okay? And that's kind of why I'm adamant about doing things a very precise, certain way, okay? So please trust me a little bit and, you know, let me show you what kind of results you can get, all right? give it a chance, practice, and do the practice the way I say, and see what happens, okay? E minor is kind of an easier one. We only have to hold down 2 notes. And this one is the A string, because remember it goes this way: Eddie ate dynamite, goodbye Eddie. Low E, A, 2nd fret. The next string D with the 3rd finger also on the 2nd fret. Don't get confused here because the numbers are finger numbers, which this is finger 1, finger 2, finger 3, and finger 4, like this, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't count the thumb. It's T for thumb if you ever do use the thumb. And the thumb is only ever used on this string to play something like this. So sometimes you'll see T, okay? But you can only use it on the E string. Okay, so A2 and D2. All right. Now, don't spread the fingers apart like this. Lock them together. Okay. You see, now they're kind of like one finger, you know, and that's what we want. We don't want to see any space, any daylight between these 2 fingers. You want to lock them together. Okay, and then check it. Okay. You can always pause this video and work on these things, you know, as the lesson progresses. But yeah, the lesson just kind of moves on, but you know, you can always pause it. And after the lesson is done, after you've watched it on Edpuzzle, you can go on our YouTube channel and watch it again, and that allows you to kind of skip around to control the playback speed and all those things. So I highly recommend, you know, if you try some of these things and you're confused, please watch the videos again. That's one benefit of doing this class online, is you can watch the lecture or the lesson again and again and again, and you can go back to certain parts of the lesson. And when I give you feedback, sometimes I'll refer you back to certain parts. I'll say, go watch lesson 3 at 28 minutes and 35 seconds and watch that part of the lesson again. Okay, because that helps me to not have to write like so much comments that are hard for people to understand. It's just watch this part of the video, and that's the thing that I'm talking about. And then after you've done all that, if you're still confused, you know, of course, email me and ask me questions. I encourage you to do that, in fact. Okay, so you get your fingers in the right place, check it. Okay, another good thing is, like, you can Google. Well, you know, Google, you get mixed results sometimes, but if you use like the image search on Google and you type in like E minor guitar chord, what you'll see is probably like a diagram like this, but then also there will be kind of like a picture of someone playing, like a close-up picture of someone playing the chord. And sometimes you know, some people, when they see those visual things, the picture of someone playing the chord, it helps, okay? Because you can see the hand position and exactly like where the fingers are. All right, but also, you know, you have this video and you can see there's E minor. Okay, the little M stands for minor. The a chord like this, E, that means major, but you don't have to say major. It's just that, you know, the E without anything next to it just means an E major chord, and the little M means minor, to differentiate it from the major. That's how the chord symbols work. Okay, so we did E minor. Now let's hold that again. E minor, set that up. Okay, if you need more time to switch chords, by all means pause the video and set your chord up, because this is just going to kind of move right along from here. And A minor is very similar to that, okay? We have the same configuration here, except it's just moved down one string like that, and then the first finger goes here, just like the first chord we were doing. All right, a little bit harder because you have to hold down 3 notes instead of just 2. Now, as I mentioned, in the orientation video, you know, you may experience some soreness, in the tips of your fingers, especially when you start doing chords. That tends to kind of stress them a little bit more. So, you know, take it easy. Don't practice for hours. Try and do, like I said, a little bit each day. You don't have to do all the 20 or 30 minutes all at once. You can do it 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. It all adds up. Um, but just keep doing it daily, and that will toughen your fingers up to the point where you won't experience any soreness or pain or anything like that after a while. And I wouldn't even really characterize it as pain. I would just kind of characterize it as like some mild discomfort, kind of like what you experience when you exercise. Okay, and when you have your fingers in the right place, try to get them towards the middle or towards this side, this side of the fret, not that side. When it goes back this way is when things are not so great. And then X on the low E string, so no E, we strum from the 5th string like this. Check it. And all together. Pause the video, kind of move your chord around, like I said, push it up, arch your fingers, put your thumb up here, press down firmly. That's another thing that, if you're not pressing firmly enough, your notes can buzz or not sound at all. But what you want is just enough, like that, and no more. No more, no less is kind of the point you want to get to. So you don't want to be over pressing, because that's putting more pressure on your fingers than you need to. Okay, that's A minor. Let's hold A minor for a second, and we'll do this chord C, because C and A minor are very similar. All you do to move from A minor to C is you take this ring finger and you put it over here on the A string on the 3rd fret, right? A minor is down here, C is over here, and the only thing that changes place is that ring finger. Okay, so that's A minor to C. Okay, and then get your fingers set up. Check it. Also, C is one that has an X on the E string. No E string for that. Now, this is a tough one. This might be the hardest one that we'll do today, and we're only going to look at 5 of these chords and no more. It's not good to try and learn too many chords at once. Now take that off, and let me show you how to set this up. Put your ring finger down first, and put that ring finger like right in the center of that fret. Okay, this time we don't want it all the way up here. We want it in the center, because we need to make room for other fingers. All right, now that's kind of like the clumsy finger. So when we're on A minor and I tell you to move that finger, it's hard to do that because that finger is not so agile. It's one of our clumsy fingers. These fingers are much stronger. So get that finger in a good place, arch the finger, and then make sure that it's not touching the string underneath. So play the A string and then the D string, just to make sure you're not touching it. Now take this finger and put it right next to the fret. All right, so I got this one is in the middle, and this one is right next to the fret in a good place. And then reach back and put this one right next to the fret. Okay, and that kind of lets us give this finger enough space to get into a good place on the fret, because normally what happens is this finger like drifts back too much and then this note doesn't sound good. Okay, so right in the middle. Okay, move your fingers around, make little adjustments. Okay, and remember what I said, if it doesn't sound like that right away, don't worry about it. Just keep practicing it and it will get better over time. Okay, I don't want you to get frustrated because you can't get one of the, like the best you can do is, like you can't quite get that note. Well, that's okay to start with, okay? Move on to something else and then come back to it and try again, okay? But you have to think about it and like try and make these. What's wrong with the chord? Am I pressing hard enough? Is it in a good place on the fret? Am I touching, is this finger touching the string underneath and muting it? And, once you get it, when you get it right, it's sort of like solving the puzzle. It feels good when it's finally sounds the right way. Okay, it's like solving the puzzle. Okay, let's do D. All right, G2. Okay, remember the 1 means the first finger, but it goes on the 2nd fret in this case. Finger 2 goes on the on the E string on the 2nd fret, and finger 3 goes on the B string on the 3rd fret. Okay, get those fingers in good positions. This one has 2 X's, so no E string and no A string, so we just play this one from the D. Show you how to set this one up, okay? Get your ring finger right in the middle of that fret, just like we did on C, and then check the string underneath to make sure that you're not touching it, okay? If you're touching it, it'll sound like that, okay? And it's the difference between this and this and this, okay? And then put your middle finger down. Put that one like right next to the fret without actually being up on it. And then check that. Okay, and then put your first finger down. Okay, now watch out, because when you do that, sometimes your fingers will like do this to make room for that finger, and suddenly like you'll lose one of the notes. So you have to kind of readjust by maybe like moving this finger this way more, like towards the floor. Okay, good. Now stop right there and check, okay? Is your arm in the right place? Is it resting here? Can you swing your arm? Are you holding the pick with just these 2 fingers? Okay, you don't want that middle finger holding onto the pick, certainly not. Okay, is your thumb up here? Is there no space between the neck and right here? Okay. And make sure there's a space between here and here, because if you're doing that, it's going to make it very difficult to play these chords. It needs to be this way with a straight wrist, okay? Okay, just always kind of keep those things in mind about how to hold the instrument with the right hand and the left hand, okay? Let's see, we did E minor, A minor, C, D, and we need one more, which is G, okay? And that will be all the chords that we're gonna do for a little while until we get those happening, okay? So A2 with the first finger, E3, and then this might be kind of a stretch for you. It's gonna be E3. So we have this finger on the low E3 and the ring finger on the high E3, which might be kind of a stretch for you. All right. So sometimes what happens is like this finger, instead of arching too much, kind of straightens out a little bit more. But what you don't want is you don't want the finger to do that, to bend that way. You always want the finger at least bending the other way. So the finger should always be like this, you know, nice arch to the fingers, and you don't ever want your finger to do this. That's bad when that happens, okay? And especially the ring finger, since it's not very coordinated, not very strong. Okay, you never want it to bend that way. Always like this and never like that, okay? So D, G, we're doing G. First finger, second finger, third finger, like that. All right. The good thing about this is when you spread the notes out, that you don't have as much chance of like the fingers touching the strings that they're not supposed to touch, because it's a stretch, but they're spread out and they have enough space. Okay. All right. So the down strum, right? Okay. And up. Nice and relaxed. You don't want to be like with a tense arm, with your arm all tense, okay? And you kind of brush the strings with the pick, all right? All right. It's kind of like a brush. You're thinking about brushing the strings, okay? And in order to do that, right, the pick, you can't be holding the pick too tight, right? Because when you hold the pick really tight and then you play the strings, it sounds like that, which is not what you want. You want you want it to sound nice, you know? When you do an up strum, you don't have to hit every single string. You know, for the up strum, just like 3 or 4 strings is good enough. But when you do the down strum, you want to hit every string, right? Unless it has an X, and then you're kind of aiming, you know, like on C, you're kind of aiming for that 5th string, or the A string rather, and D, you want to try and avoid hitting the E and the A string. So that takes some practice. The best way to practice that is to just actually like look at your right hand and aim the pick for those strings. If you hit a string that has an X on it by accident, don't worry about it. You know, that happens. But you try to actually aim the pick on the down strums. All right? Because, you know, like if I'm playing D, this sounds different when I get all 6 strings than just 4. Okay? So, that will take some practice to get good, to get those chords sounding good when you check them, and to also to remember where to put your fingers when you see the chord symbol. And the best way to practice this is by learning a song. Okay, so we're gonna do this one, Knocking on Heaven's Door. All right. Okay, the first chord is G. All right, and you'll notice there's no diagram here, so if you forget G, you have to go back to the chord chart, look at G. Okay, get your chord set up. All right, and then go back to here, and then we're gonna play a strum pattern. Okay, so this symbol here means down. Okay, this symbol right here. So this is down, down, down. This is the half note and the quarter note, and then these are 1/8 notes. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so half note, 1, 2, 3, like that, and the quarter note comes on 3 because the half note gets 2 and the quarter note gets 1. So if we put the metronome on, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Okay, like that. Or the voice.
1,
Oh, that's right. I gotta set it back to 4/4. Okay, 4/4.
1, 2,
Ready? With your G
3,
chord.
4,
4,
1, 2,
2,
3,
3,
4,
4, and like
1.
that. Okay, so the eighth notes are 4 and. If we look at the rhythm chart, here are eighth notes. And this just shows you that when they're together in pairs or groups, they get beamed together with the beam. And when they're by themselves, they have a little flag because there's nothing to beam them to when they're by themselves. In this case, there's two of them and they get beamed together. Okay. Quarter notes and half notes and anything larger cannot be beamed to anything. Okay, only the eighth notes and smaller can get beamed together. And if you look at the rhythm chart, it says an eighth note is 1/2. So half a beat, or you can think of it as 2 per beat. So here's eighth notes. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. And normally, what we do is when it's 1, 2, 3, or 4, we're coming down with the pick, and when it's on the and of the beat, we're coming up. So this is the way we count it: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And that's assuming that there's 8 eighth notes in the measure. Okay. So we're coming down on 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we're coming up on and. Because when we have eighth notes, we have to divide the beat in half, and that's how we do it. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now let's try that, and we'll count it. Ready? And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. One more time. Ready? And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And this symbol means up. You probably figured that out already. The V symbol means up, and this symbol means down. So down and down, down, up. Ready? And down and down, down, up. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, now let's do D. So you go back to the chord chart. Here's our D chord. Let's set that up. Pause the video, set your chord up, check it. Okay, when you're ready, let's play D with the strum pattern. Ready? And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay, just hold D for a sec. Okay, let's take a look at some of these notes. All right, it says this is a strum pattern that is the same on every measure. This is the best way to get started. We can make it more complicated later on. Okay, so we're just learning a strum pattern, and we're going to do exactly the same thing on every single measure. That way you get the repetition, you learn the strum pattern, it gets really ingrained, and that helps you to focus on the other things that you need to focus on, like trying to remember where to put your fingers for each chord, and getting your chord to sound nice. And then the real big challenge, which is like trying to do that quickly, switching from chord to chord. So this is going to take some time, okay? And I'm going to give you guys enough time, plenty of time, to do these things and get this right. But we do need to get it going like pretty well reasonably quick switches, you know. So make sure you practice this every day. All right. So the strum pattern, it's the same thing. Don't need to get too creative with the strumming. We want to learn this pattern, and when you do your assignments, like just do it that way. That way, I know that you know this pattern. Because when people get more creative with it, I start wondering, do they really know, or are they just guessing something? Okay, so let's look at this third thing. This is really useful. Okay, and first of all, let's set up our next chord, which is A minor. Okay, A minor. Here we go. Pause the video, get your fingers in the right place, check it, and then we're ready to play. Okay, and let's read this third thing down here. It says, try doing a fake down strum on beat 2 to keep better time by keeping the right hand in motion constantly and steadily. So here's a fake strum. Okay, I do a strum, except I just don't hit anything. And I want to do that on beat 2, which is the space between this note and this note. Okay, so what I do is I go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and I do a down strum, but I just don't hit anything on beat 2. And that's a way to count this rhythm, right? If I keep this hand in motion, and I use it, this can be my metronome. This is my clock pendulum, right? And as long as it's moving constantly and steadily, and by the way, that's sort of the whole idea between which things are down and which things are up, is that it all falls in, the natural motion of your hand and your arm when you're doing this, right? So A minor, and let's do it twice, okay? Because we have two measures of A minor, so we have to do that one 2 times. So when you come up, come right back down on the next thing. This measure line makes it seem like there's a space between this and this, but there isn't. It just goes down, up, down into the next measure, okay? So this doesn't mean take a break. Also, when it goes from one line to the next line, that looks like it's even more of a space, but it's not. It just goes straight into the next thing. So the end of the line or the end of the measure doesn't mean take a break. It's just continuous, okay? So we're going to do 2 measures of A minor. Ready? And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so let's do that one more time and do the fake strum on beat 2. So keep your hand moving constantly and steadily, and you should never have to do any kind of sudden jerky type movements with your arm. It should just all be steady, constant, and relaxed, okay? A minor 2 times. Ready? And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and okay, and then stop. All right, because we're gonna have to switch back to G. All right, let's go back to G. Hopefully you can remember that by now. Maybe not. Check your chord chart, get it set up, check it. Okay, and like I said, if it's not perfect, then it's fine. You just have to work with that until it gets better. All right. Now, with the speak beat, we showed you it can count 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. But then also, if you click the gear wheel, you go into the settings, and they have this, like, there's a quarter note and then eighth note. So if we switch to eighth note, now it counts
1 and 2 and
okay.
3.
Very useful
and
here.
4 and 1.
Okay, let's play
and 2
with
and
this
3
and 4
and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1.
One more time.
2.
I almost forgot to do my fake strum. Ready?
And 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and.
That's another good thing to do, is just to do the strum pattern again and again and again on the same chord, just to get used to it. Okay. D. Let's do D. Alright, so I'm showing you ways to practice this, okay? You can try counting out loud like what I'm doing, and that's kind of a skill that's difficult to develop, but it's a very useful skill to be able to count out loud and play along with your own counting. And if you do that, then just do it very, very slowly at first, like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and like that. Very, very slowly, and then later you can get to where you can do it quicker. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Alright? And then also this kind of teaches you sort of how, it's supposed to be like. Like I said, when we do our own counting, we always cheat. We give ourselves a little bit more time here and there. The metronome doesn't wait for you. It's very exact, and it keeps going and does not wait up. All right, let's do D. Okay. Check your chord chart. Pause the video. Set it up. Okay, and let's play 1
and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1.
Okay, and then finally C. Here's C. Okay, remember, set that ring finger up first, get it in the middle. Check that you're not touching the string. Put your middle finger down. Okay, C. And we're gonna do C 2 times because we have 2 measures of C. So when you come up, go right back down and do the other measure, okay?
1
Ready?
and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1.
Okay, so let's look at this last note here. Okay, let's go back to G, back to the beginning. Okay, the G chord, check it. Okay, and what this means here is repeat. So when you see these 2 dots, that means you repeat, and you always repeat back to the left hand 2 dots. So when you have the 2 dots on the right side of the measure, you have to go back to where the 2 dots are on the left side of the measure, which is back here. But if it was here, you'd go back to here if it was there. But it's up here, and you go back to there. And the beauty of this song, and why I like to start with this one, is that this is the entire song. It just does this over and over again for the entire thing. I'll post the song, the original song, along with your study materials so that you can listen to it, because these are all songs that, they have a original recording that you can go and listen to, and you should be familiar with that. So G, okay, and the last little note here, we talked about the strum pattern, we talked about the fake strum, and this is the last thing, which has to do with how we switch from chord to chord, okay? When switching chords, play the last eighth note before the switch on the open strings. In other words, take your fingers off the strings before playing that note. Okay, and what that means, very simply, is that before I do this up strum, at the end, I just take my fingers off the strings and I play on the open strings, okay? So set your G chord up, pause the video if you need time, okay? And you go ready, and 1, and fake, and 3, and 4, off, like that, okay? I'm kind of pulling them off just to make the point and show you, okay? They just have to come off enough to where you can get those open strings, okay? And that's how we create a space to make that switch. So eventually it will sound like this, the switch. But maybe you already know that because maybe you watched the example video already. There's an example video of me playing this. But yeah, you take your fingers off the strings and play the open strings, and that gives you the space you need to switch to the next chord. Now, even though we're not switching quickly, it's still a good idea to go ahead and get in the habit of doing that, okay? And so we're gonna do G. All right, ready? And 1, and fake, and 3, and 4, off, okay? Don't forget to take your fingers off the strings, okay? D. Pause the video, set your chord up, check it, get ready to play, and ready, and 1, and fake, and 3, and 4, off, and then A minor. Set your chord up, pause the video, look at your chord chart, okay? A minor, check it, make sure it sounds good. A minor, we have to do that twice. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to take your fingers off the strings here because we have to do it again. And you don't want to take your fingers off and then set up the same chord. It's only when you're switching chords that you do that. That's why it says here, when switching chords, okay? But we do want to take our fingers off here because A minor to G is one of our switches, okay? So let's try that. Ready? 2 times. Don't take your fingers off the first time, but do on the second time, okay? Ready, and 1, and fake, and 3, and 4, and 1, and fake, and 3, and 4, off. Next line, G, ready, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, off. D, ready, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, off, and C, ready, and 2 times. Don't take your fingers off the first time, but do on the second time. We do have to take them off here because with the repeat sign, C back to G counts also as one of our switches that we have to practice, okay? Ready, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, off. Okay? So, like I said, that is going to be a whole process. It's going to take time to work on that, but if you practice every day, you can do it. That's why we only want to focus on these 4 chords and only that, and get those happening with the strum pattern and the fake strum and the open strings, okay? So this lesson should remind you about some things about how to hold the guitar with the right hand, how to hold the guitar with the left hand, arching the fingers, which fingers to use, and also give you like a routine to follow in your practice sessions, okay? So, get holding the guitar properly, tune it up with your tuner, make sure you're in tune, then play your scale. use the metronome. Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
It's kind of fast. Switch it back to quarter notes.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, your songs.
1, 2, 3, 1. 1.
Let's take it back to a
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2.
Okay. And then, of course, play with the example recordings. Like we said, that's the final check to make sure you're doing everything right. Okay, and, and then we got our knocking on heaven's door,
1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1.
Need to set that to 4.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1 and 2.
Okay, that's more about the normal speed of the recording. Maybe a little faster. Okay, and then later we can make that way more complicated. So there's all kinds of things that we can do with that, and I'm just playing around rhythmically with some other techniques, just with these chords on Knocking on Heaven's Door. Okay, but we start out with something simpler, just the strum pattern, slower. That's the first thing that we want to master. Okay, and that's a really good order to do the practice, right? Tune it, play your scale, that's your warm-up. Twinkle Twinkle, Eau Claire de la Lune, Drink to Me, play with example recordings, try with the metronome, and then finally do the chords, okay? Because usually what happens is like people just want to work on these songs, right? And so they'll skip all that, scale and other stuff, skill work, metronome work, and just go straight into like playing the chords, and then they only do that, and you can see because like their chord assignments are all good, and then the other skill assignments are not so great. So practice and then be well balanced and well rounded, okay? And we will do more with scales, more with single note melody songs, and much more with chords and strum patterns. And you want to stay, keep up with the pace of the course and the study materials. Okay, so that's all for today. I'll see you in the next video. Mahalo.